Alex Hammond and I wrote this, The Paris Collaborator. It's a mystery thriller set during the Second World War in occupied Paris, and it tells the story of Auguste Duchesne, who is a former school teacher who now finds missing people. He is approached by the French resistance to find a missing priest who has disappeared with a cache of stolen weapons. At the same time, he is threatened by a powerful German officer into finding a missing German soldier who is maybe deserted. It tells the story of a simple man thrust into extraordinary circumstances and forced to consider how far to compromise in order to survive.
How far would you go to survive during the occupation? This is a central theme not only to Duchesne's predicament, but for many other characters throughout the novel. A black marketeer selling to both sides, the local shopper owners who serve Germans, the performers who entertain Nazis in nightclubs and bars, and of course, the French resistance who put their lives at risk to fight their occupiers. In every one of these situations, a choice has been made: how far to compromise, where to take a stand. What is more important, your life or your principles? I've tried to avoid a black and white portrayal of the French and Germans. In The Paris Collaborator, the French resistance are no easy heroes. They execute those they believe to be collaborators. They pressure Parisians into helping them, all because they believe in the greater good. Meanwhile, the Germans are multi-layered. Of course, there are villainous Nazis, but there are also those Germans who are naive, misguided, and even a few who have been forced into service in a war that they don't support. I set myself the goal of portraying history in a way that was nuanced, flawed, and complicated, to bring depth and complexity to the unfolding mystery, and to give us no easy answers. A few years ago, I received the original typed report of a night patrol written by my journalist grandfather who fought in North Africa and Italy during the Second World War. The narrative style of the report brought a fantastic sense of tension and authenticity to his wartime experience. Moving through the night in the desert, uncertain of what lay beyond each hill, the growing anxiety of how much noise their patrol was making at each turn, and finally their relief at returning to camp unharmed. This whole harrowing experience was summarised down into just 3 words back to HQ: nothing to report. It should come as no surprise that this planted the seed to write a historical mystery around regular people thrust into extraordinary circumstances. This new novel provided me new and interesting challenges, often needling away at my self-doubt and imposter syndrome. You see, I was writing about Paris, a city that I visited but am no expert on, 2 cultures and languages that I know only very little about. Finally, there was the challenge of a very precise historical setting, a few days in August 1944. So it all came down to the research and faith that all I needed to do was give the reader just enough to draw their own world and colour it as they saw fit. There are plenty of first-hand accounts, photography and film from occupied Paris, and so much of this is online and easy to find. It made visualising the world I wrote a lot easier. And then there were the wealth of historical works on the occupation. I had to fight hard against delving too deep when it came to these, but they helped me set aside my concerns about being accurate. I had my references, and I knew I could cite them. And of course, Google Maps was amazing. Neighbourhoods, metro stations, historical sites, street names, many of the churches, they're all the same from 70 years ago. We live in such an unparalleled time when I can, within a couple of seconds, know the approximate driving time from the Arc de Triomphe to the Luxembourg Gardens. It's about 12 minutes if you take Avenue Marceau. This was the hardest book that I've ever written. I found myself self-editing as I was writing, drawing on what I had learnt in previous books I'd written and my experience in working with editors and publishers over the years. I also wanted to stretch the story and push myself to come up with new and interesting twists and turns in a way that made sense to the reader. But all this hard work was worth it, and it greatly improved the book. And that was before the support and insight and advice of my editor and publisher, which lifted the book again. I've tried to evoke a living, breathing time in Paris's history, populate this with intriguing characters who guard close their secrets from a protagonist, Duchesne, who is very much a flawed, believable human, driven by their own sense of morality in the world and a desire to survive in what is a complicated time in human history. I hope that you get the opportunity to read The Paris Collaborator and enter this very different time and place.